So chaotic is the word that best describes the rise of Kyle Busch. This is a driver that was prohibited from making just his 7th NASCAR start. Just the presence of Kyle Busch was so controversial to where NASCAR created a new rule that almost derailed his entire career. From one powerhouse to another, Kyle Busch's youth was a consistent storyline. Whether that was taking after his brother by ruffling the feathers of NASCAR veterans, winning his first Budweiser Pole Award years before he was even of drinking age, plus, with a rookie crew chief having an incredible rookie season that broke NASCAR history. This isn't just another story of a NASCAR driver's rise to stardom. This is the story of how a teenager took the NASCAR world by storm. NRF Productions presents the chaotic rise of Kyle Busch. So Kyle Busch's fulfilling racing career starts with someone's racing dreams that were unfulfilled. Tom Busch was a Ford dealership mechanic by day, local short track racer by night. Cars and racing were a focal part of Tom Busch's life. Unfortunately, Tom was never able to make a career out of his side gig due to financial problems. Tom never went all in on himself, so instead he chose to vicariously live his racing dreams through his kids. As a father, Tom sacrificed a lot. That included his prized possession, a 1932 Ford, which he sold so that his eldest son, Kurt, could get his start in racing. Years later, as it turned out, his gamble would pay off. In 2001, Kurt Busch rolled onto the NASCAR Cup Series grid as a full-time driver for the rising powerhouse Roush Racing. In that same year, his younger brother Kyle was set to begin his climb up the NASCAR Cup Series ladder the same way that Kurt did. Kyle Busch at the time was in the Roush development system and had 7 scheduled starts in the 99 truck. This was the same truck and the same team that older brother Kurt used to shake up the Truck Series norm. Still, Kyle Busch was going to have his work cut out for him racing as a 16-year-old kid in a series full of NASCAR veterans. However, when Kyle took the green flag to start his first ever NASCAR race, he looked like anything but a kid that just received his driver's license. Kyle Busch would blend into the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series as shown by his formidable 9th place finish in his series debut. 2 races later at the Chicago Motor Speedway, Kyle continued to drive much older than his age. In this race, Busch displayed veteran-like situational awareness to avoid plowing into the spinning Jack Sprague. This move would put Kyle Busch into a position to not only get a career best finish, but possibly win his first race. It's just too bad crew chief James Campy didn't give him enough fuel. As it would turn out, this race would cool off the momentum that Kyle Busch had going for him. He followed up Chicago with 3 subpar finishes before getting another top 10 at his hometown race in Las Vegas. However, the most notable Truck Series moment for Kyle Busch in his rookie season would happen in his 7th start at the California Speedway. NASCAR prohibited him from competing in the race. At just 16 years old, Kyle Busch got banned from a race, but why? Since the weekend's races at California were sponsored by Marlboro, Kyle Busch couldn't compete. The reason why was because the big cigarette companies and California's Attorney General agreed that no athlete under 18 could compete in a cigarette-sponsored event. That means if Kyle Busch were to hypothetically start this race, Marlboro would be violating their half of the agreement with the California state. This was simply a frustrating situation to be in, especially if you're a driver like Kyle Busch that just wants to compete. Max Jones, who was at the time Roush's general manager, was disappointed in the decision. He claimed that Roush had went through all of the procedures to make sure that Kyle was able to compete, yet Kyle was still denied of participating in the event. Instead, Tim Woods would drive the number 99 truck in relief of Kyle Busch. Now, while this seemed harmless at the time, in the bigger picture, there is a thing called the domino effect. All it takes is one small decision to completely rewrite the course of NASCAR history. This controversy would spark a domino effect that forever changed Kyle Busch's career. So in the offseason, NASCAR created a new rule that prohibited drivers under 18 from competing in any of their touring events. This meant that Kyle Busch was ineligible to make any NASCAR starts in 2002, considering that he wasn't going to turn 18 until May of 2003. As things would play out, Kyle Busch getting banned from a cigarette-sponsored race would domino into Kyle Busch eventually losing his opportunity to climb the ladder at Roush Racing. Jack Roush, with championship ambitions for his Truck Series team, didn't want to wait on Kyle Busch turning 18 and instead chose to go a different direction. The full-time opportunity would instead be a big break for Ken Schrader's nephew, Carl Edwards. Tom Busch, in learning of this news, decided to pursue different racing avenues for his youngest son. Since Kyle Busch wasn't an adult at the time, he was legally not under any contract to Roush Racing. With Kyle Busch not bound to any team, he was now officially the biggest hot commodity in NASCAR. He wasn't just the younger brother to Kurt, who was now one of the faces of a new NASCAR. A racing league that was not only getting younger, but was also starting to rattle the cages of the old veterans. Kyle Busch's talents would be in hot demand, especially with many of the rising powerhouses in NASCAR. As things would unravel, his new home would be with the organization that had a track record of producing talented, young Cup-level superstars. Hendrick Motorsports was becoming every driver's dream team. For Kyle Busch, he was one of the few that Rick Hendrick thought had a bright future. Kyle Busch would sign a multi-year deal to become a Hendrick development driver. After spending his 2002 in the ASA series, Kyle Busch would make his NASCAR return in May of 2003. Expectations in Kyle Busch's first start back would be astronomical. Not just because Rick Hendrick wants his cars to perform well, especially at Charlotte. The question on everyone's mind was, how would a young talent like Kyle Busch stack up against the Cup Series veterans? In his first NASCAR Busch Series start, Kyle Busch would turn some heads and show that he is a future face of NASCAR. On that afternoon, in front of the entire NASCAR industry, he led 33 laps, finished second to Matt Kenseth, and beat many of the drivers competing for wins on Sunday. Busch would make 6 more starts in 2003, scoring impressive runs at drivers' tracks like Darlington and Rockingham. In these select starts in 2003, Kyle Busch proved that he could be competitive, and as a result, Hendrick Motorsports would grant him a full-time Busch Series ride for 2004. Lowe's, being the HendrickCars.com of the 2000s, would be the full season sponsor for Busch's Busch campaign. As for the crew chief of this program, it would be someone Dale Earnhardt Jr. fans would come to love with all their heart over the next few years, Lance McGrew. Now, to give McGrew some credit, he did a great job in getting the most out of younger drivers, as shown in 2003 when he helped Brian Vickers win the Busch Championship. With McGrew's level of experience coaching younger drivers, Kyle Busch would continue his chaotic rise in his first full-time season. In this season, Kyle Busch proved how versatile he could be as a driver, whether that was scoring dominant wins at both Richmond and Charlotte, or at Kentucky where Kyle Busch was forced to start shotgun on the field due to a practice crash. Kyle Busch showed he could overcome adversity by passing Greg Biffle with 3 laps to go to win the race. 2 more wins at IRP and Michigan helped give Kyle Busch a credible argument to be the 2004 NASCAR Busch Series champion. This is where the chaos of Kyle Busch would ramp up. So entering Darlington, Kyle Busch's chances of becoming season champion were fading away. Being able to get a top 5 finish or potentially win Darlington was really the last chance for him to catch Martin Truex Jr. However, he would get into an altercation with Ron Hornaday Jr. early in the race. Hornaday, not pleased, brake checked Kyle Busch into the corner and caused a big wreck. In that moment, Ron Hornaday Jr. ended Kyle Busch's chances at the 2004 title. Now, as they say, race car drivers have a sharper memory than elephants. Kyle Busch would make sure to store this incident at the front and center inside his hippocampus. This was something not to be forgotten anytime he was around Ron Hornaday on the racetrack. So in the bigger picture, 2004 was a big year to be a Busch in the NASCAR Cup Series. For older brother Kurt, he completed his progression from being flipped off by Dale Earnhardt to becoming NASCAR Cup Series champion. It was also the year where Kyle Busch got his call up to the big leagues. Younger brother Kyle would end up making his first Cup Series start in front of his friends and family. Despite qualifying a respectable 18th, the 84 battled loose conditions all weekend long. The inexperienced Kyle Busch would hit the wall twice before retiring from the race completely after completing just 11 laps. So Kyle Busch's 2004 result might have had some fans thinking, NASCAR bust? Especially with Kyle Busch DNQing in a Hendrick car 3 times. However, in 2004, Hendrick Motorsports was in a predicament. Overall, the 2004 season for Hendrick was Jekyll Hyde. While the 24-48 shop won 13 races, the 5-25 shop had just 10 top 10 finishes. Rick Hendrick now needed to make a decision: stick or twist. Stick with having Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson carry the team, or twist by shaking things up within the entire organization, potentially at the disservice of the 24-48 shop to improve overall performance. In this situation, Rick chose to twist. Multiple personnel changes were made at Hendrick Motorsports, which included a new GM and overall manager for the 5-25 shop. Part of the shakeups was the complete rebuild of the number 5 team from scratch. Alan Gustafson's dream of working in the racing industry had become a reality. For 2005, he would replace NASCAR's veteran Jim Long as the 5 team's crew chief. As for the driver, Terry Labonte would be reduced to a part-time role, which would introduce a full circle story. As a kid growing up, Kyle Busch watched the 1996 championship. This was a race where Bobby Labonte won the race and Terry Labonte won the championship. 9 years later, he would replace Terry Labonte in the 5 car and join his brother Kurt as a full-time Cup driver. Busch was more than honored to be replacing a legend like Terry and wanted to continue the legacy of the iconic Hendrick number 5 car. So while Busch met Busch, Busch spent his offseason preparing for his first full-time season and was hoping to make headlines as a 20-year-old NASCAR Cup Series rookie. Like he had been up to this point, Kyle Busch continued his chaos into the NASCAR Cup Series. At the same track where he was prohibited from competing and ultimately got banned from NASCAR for a year, Kyle Busch won a Budweiser Pull Award at the age of 19. This sparked another controversy as Busch, who would be 20 next February, was now eligible for the Budweiser Shootout. Kyle Busch winning the poll sparked a week-long conversation as to whether he would be eligible for the shootout, which ultimately he would compete in the 2006 race. The next week at Las Vegas, Kyle Busch scored his best Cup Series finish to date, finishing second to Jimmy Johnson. This was a run that silenced the critics, as many questioned the Kyle Busch-Alan Gustafson pairing, which was a young rookie driver and a young rookie crew chief. On that afternoon, the duo showed that age didn't matter and they could still be up there competing with the elite in the NASCAR Cup Series. Still, even with this statement run, the chaos surrounded Kyle Busch. Both the 5 and the 48 teams received penalties after Las Vegas. For Kyle Busch, the quarter panels of his number 5 Kellogg's Monte Carlo were too high. Busch paid the price with the loss of 25 driver and owner points, as well as crew chief Alan Gustafson for 2 races. However, in the appeals process, Gustafson's 2-race suspension would be rescinded. That Las Vegas weekend would summarize Kyle Busch's season in a nutshell. It was like a roller coaster at the Carowinds with the ups and the downs. The ups were some of the runs that made the entire industry raise their eyebrows. In his second Coca-Cola 600, Kyle Busch led 55 laps, which helped Hendrick Motorsports dominate the race. Then the next week, he would do something that NASCAR fans would come to dread over the next decade. Kyle Busch would run the truck race, the Busch race, and the Cup race in the same weekend. In his first trip to Dover as a full-time Cup driver, Kyle Busch impressed at the driver's track by leading 90 laps and finishing second to the track's owner, Jimmy Johnson. Unfortunately, there were also a lot of downs that made everyone scoff in disgust. In the Watkins Glen race, Kyle Busch hit the number 37 on the cool-down lap as a form of retaliation. This prompted NASCAR to respond. Kyle Busch would be fined $10,000 and be placed on NASCAR probation until the end of the year. So fans and industry members were fed up with the younger Busch like they were the older Busch. While you could say he was still young and still maturing, he was getting old. Let me explain this. The NASCAR Cup Series record for youngest winner was Donald Thomas at 20 years, 4 months, and 6 days old. Kyle Busch on the day of the 2005 Sony 500 was 20 years, 4 months, and 2 days old. This was the final chance for Kyle Busch to break a long-standing record and become the youngest winner in NASCAR Cup Series history. In hindsight, maybe it was too easy to predict what Kyle Busch would do on this night. This was a track where Kyle Busch had twice already rewritten NASCAR history forever. Once again, Kyle Busch would prove to be quite the agent of chaos.
Kyle Busch, the Kellogg Chevrolet, he is the winner of the Sony HD 500 at California.
Kyle Busch officially became the youngest winner in NASCAR Cup Series history. It was a historic victory done in impeccable fashion, with Kyle Busch leading a race-high 95 laps. Unfortunately, the postseason ambitions for Kyle Busch were long extinguished, but this win gave the number 5 team some much-needed momentum. Kyle Busch would get 4 top 10 finishes in the last 11 races and continue his chaotic rise in Phoenix. Just hours after his older brother was charged with a DUI and was released by Roush, younger brother Kyle won his second career Cup Series race. As of 2025, Kyle Busch is just one of 7 drivers to win multiple races as a rookie in NASCAR's modern era. Kyle Busch would ultimately complete his chaotic first season as a full-time driver by winning Rookie of the Year. Yes, Carl Edwards was the more impressive full-time rookie. However, Kyle got the honors because he didn't cross the experience threshold measured in races like Carl did. The way Kyle Busch won the Rookie of the Year honors was perfect, as this once again showed that Kyle Busch was an agent of chaos. Something that Kyle would continue throughout his NASCAR career, whether that was becoming a NASCAR champion after missing 11 races, nearly killing Ron Hornaday and getting suspended, or smashing a trophy at Nashville. Heck, even at the California Speedway, Kyle Busch would continue to have many moments and memories that would make his career colorful. Kyle Busch is one of NASCAR's most chaotic drivers, and it all begins with one of the most insane rises to stardom in NASCAR history.